Welcome to the Seedling Stitch Knitting Podcast. My name is Athena. I am a Chinese knitter living in Vancouver, Canada, and this is my space on the internet where I chat about my knitting projects and sometimes a little bit about crochet and sewing too. You may notice that I've just changed my camera. I came back to China 2 months ago, so I brought back this very new good camera and also a lot of good Chinese yarn and knitting supplies and notions and stuff. So I'm really excited to share all about these with you. One thing about my really good camera is that I didn't have the budget to get a really good lens with it, so it's manually focused, so everything I have to show has to be on this plane. If I show you something in the front, it's not gonna autofocus there. I planning getting budget for a better autofocus lens in the future, but for this episode you have just to endure it. But I hope this is much better than my previous phone camera, so that's an improvement. And also I'll acknowledge that I haven't been making these episodes for a while, so you might be missing me a little bit. That's because of some personal life development that I'll talk about at the end of this episode. So we'll start with a lot of knitting projects because I have lots and lots of them to show you. I'm really excited. Okay, I'll just get started right away. We'll start by introducing you to what I'm wearing. I've showed at the beginning of the episodes and talk a lot about it in my Instagram and other social media. This vest I'm wearing, it is called Ophelia. The design is from a Japanese designer, Toshiyuki Shimada, from his pattern book called Knitting Eclogue. Unfortunately, this book is only available in Japanese and Chinese. No, even not in Chinese. So it's only available in Japanese. If you are new here, I knit quite a lot of Japanese patterns or Chinese patterns or translated from Japan. I'm a huge fan of Japanese designs. I feel that the Japanese designs, they are underrated in the English knitting world, and I just hope that by making these podcasts and sharing my projects, there are a lot of great Japanese designers that deserves to be known by more knitters. So here I am. But Japanese patterns, they depends a lot on the graphs, diagrams, rather than a lot of the written text. So compared to English language patterns, they are easier to understand if you don't know the language at all. And I've made a few tutorials in my channel about how to read them. So if you're interested in trying out some Japanese patterns, you can always check out my older tutorials. And here I'm just gonna entice you and lure you to the fantastic Japanese knitting world by my projects. This is a Farrell project that involves steeking. If you don't know, steeking means that you're knitting in the round for this Colourwork, stranded Colourwork, and then you cut it. This is the second time that I've ever done steeking, and I'm much more confident, and I can share a little bit of the whole process. First, I'll talk about the yarn. The yarn is Isiger, Highland wool, and alpaca one. So these colors and yarn are from the original design. I actually just bought a kit. There is a Chinese yarn store online that just sell this by kits. So instead of selling you like the whole ball of yarn, they just wind like 10 gram or 20 gram, the needed amount the required amount from the pattern. So it's really good for them and really good for me, just so that I won't have a lot of leftovers. So I think that's a really good approach, but I don't think this this Chinese yarn shop is selling this as a kit anymore, unfortunately. So yeah. And the main color, the blue grayish main color, is holding one strand of the Highland wool and the alpaca one, and the little flowers is just one single strand of Highland wool, and the green little leaves of these flowers, those are holding Highland wool and alpaca one together as well. And in terms of needle sizes, for the main color work, I used 3mm needle, but for the pattern, he used 3.25mm needle. And this designer, he is famous for having a very tight gauge. So I've heard about that, so I just directly reduced to 3mm needle. That has been proved to be sort of a round decision. I'm normally a loose knitter, but this yarn is very thin, and maybe my gauge has changed over time. I actually knit quite tightly after this, so I had to block quite aggressively after the wash and to this measurements, but everything worked out. So yeah, I'll talk about the modifications and just the procedure of knitting this and the steeking. I made a few modifications. So in the pattern, he asks you to do the provisional cast on from here and just knit the color work directly from bottom up. And I just hate to do the provisional cast on. I don't think that's necessary. So I just directly knit from bottom up. So I'll just cast on the bottom ribbing and knit the ribbing. And then it has a very interesting construction for the edge. So here, actually, I had to bind off these stitches. When I'm about here, I bind off these stitches and then use backward loop cast on to cast on my steeking stitches. So if you are not familiar with steeking, it's a technique used in Colourwork just because when you, if you do these stranded color work in the flat, it's really complicated. But if you just do everything in the round, you only work on the right side, so it's much easier. But if you want to make these like sleeve holes, normally you would have to be knitting in the flat, but you can also just knit in the round and just have a few stitches. I normally have 14 stitches and have 14 stitches in between, and then later on you cut through those extra stitches and then fold in those extra stitches. So that's basically the technique of steeking. So I knit in the round, and those are just color works. There's nothing more complicated. And up to here, and then it's just one single color, so I can knit in the flat to shape the shoulder and the neckline, and same for the back. And then I do the 3-needle bind off. Is that the technique? So you just just connect the front piece and the back piece on the shoulder here together. And after that, the exciting part is to do the steeking. I actually filmed a small footage of me just doing the steeking. I know a lot of people are scared by steeking. For me, it's really cool. I really enjoyed the steeking part. I enjoyed the sound of the scissors going through the knitted fabric. You listen to the sound. I'll put my footage here. It's exciting for me. And also just with woolen yarn, like this one is the Highland wool, and or like the Shetland, the more rustic wool. The wool will naturally felt a little bit, so you don't need to worry about the yarn, the fabric unravels. Some people would secure the steeking edge with a crocheted line. Just personally, I don't find I need to do that. I usually just after finish knitting the piece, I would just steam block a little bit from the wrong side, just to lightly felt the fabric, especially the part where I'm going to cut. And then I picked up the stitches along this line and finished knitting the ribbing, and then I secure the steeked edge. Yeah, so pick up and knit the ribbing. There's nothing fancy, just pick up stitches and knit ribbing. And in just for this vest, it knitted ribbing also here around the waist, and used the 3-needle bind-off technique to close the front and the back of the ribbing. And just because I didn't do the provisional cast on around here, if you follow the original pattern, you would have unraveled the provisional cast on and pick up and knit stitches from here and knit the ribbing downwards. But for me, since I've already knitted the ribbing, I just use a mattress stitch to close here, and that's what I did. Yes, after all those things, finally I will secure the steeking edge, because you don't want it to just to stay there. It doesn't look very neat. So just to give it a perfect finish, I trimmed the stitches so that I only have 5 of the extra stitches left. And then I sew 1 stitch from the wrong side, like just from a purl bump, and then another stitch from the 4th stitch, and then another half stitch from the 3rd stitch. And I'll put a picture here so that you have a better idea. And I just like sew here, use back stitch. I don't really know the technical word for this kind of sewing. I just sew in this manner every 2 rows until I've secured the edge. And also I pick up stitches to knit the collar, so that's nothing fancy. So basically I followed all the stitch counts, and my only modification was the order of the procedure of knitting it and how I do the steeking. In the book, he I think he only said you would do 12 stitches for the steeking extra stitches, but here I did 14 just because I feel safer with 14 stitches. And after all that, it's still a bit too small. As I said before, my gauge was a bit too tight, so I really aggressively blocked it. I don't have a blocking pin and the blocking pad, but I found that I could use my dumbbells. I have a lot of little dumbbells for like practicing arm muscles, so I just like put dumbbells at different places and just to hold the vest in shape, and eventually I have this nice shape of the vest. I'm really glad. So yeah, if you don't have blocking pins, you can use your dumbbells. And one of my followers said on Instagram that after the blocking, my vest will have 6 packs. It was really funny. Yeah, so that's all about the vest. I'll move on to the next project. So after finishing the vest, the weather gets a little bit cold. My hat gets a bit too cold, so I need a hat. Actually, I finished 2 hats. And the first hat I finished is this one. This is a balloon, and that's how I block my hats. I learned from another pattern that I'm gonna show you that you can block your hat with a balloon, and I just blow this balloon to the sides of my head so that I can shape the hat perfectly. And if you see this color, it looks really familiar, right? Because I used the exact same yarn from the Ophelia Slipover project. The pattern, this one is from the Shetland Wool Week free pattern from a few years ago, I think 2 years ago. The pattern is called Crofter's hat. It's just a basic but beautiful Colourwork Farrell style hat. I really love the beautiful star on the top. And just for this pattern, I would need 2 darker colors and a lot of lighter colors. But in this vest, mostly the darker color is just this one. But I'll need another one, so I just chose the darkest, like this color. I think it's called clay or something, as the second dark color. It's not a very strong contrast, unfortunately, but I just want to use my leftover yarn, so that's what I did. What else? Oh, the purpose of making this hat is because I need a small hat that can fit under my biking helmet. I started biking since this year, and it's getting cold, and I cannot fit my other thick woolly hat under the biking helmet, so I just want to knit a very thin, tightly fitted Farrell hat. So I knitted the smallest size. I still use the 3mm needle, but my gauge is quite tight. So this is a really small hat. If you see me wear it, it's making me kind of like a bald person. It's the fit doesn't look that beautiful, although the Farrell patterns are really, really beautiful, but it fits under the biking helmet, and it's warm because it's wool and alpaca. So that's all I wanted. I really like this pattern. I really like the shape of the star. I think the next time I make this pattern, I would use either a thicker yarn or a larger needle just to make it a bit longer, because it's not big enough. It's only cover half of my ear, and I have to stretch it quite a bit to cover everything. So yeah, but I'm still 100% happy with it. So that's my first hat. And my second hat is this one. This is another Shetland Wool Week hat. I think from 2019. It's called Baa-Ble Hat by Donna Smith. And yeah, the first time I saw the design of this hat, I was like, I need to make it. I never found the time to do so, but now this year I found the time to do so, and I also found the yarn to make this pattern. The yarn I used, if you've been following me for a while, these might look familiar again. It's the scrape yarn from another of my sweater project, and that's my wall garden sweater, this one. And you can see the brim is this color, the sky is the window color, and the little green one is some of these green shades over here. It's the only other yarn I introduced was the yarn from the sheep. This is just like a generic fuzzy yarn from my grandma. When I started knitting, my grandma donated a lot of her stash to me, so this is one of the fluffy yarn she gave me. It doesn't feel like wool. It's not like a high quality yarn, but it's very fluffy. It feels like acrylic. But it's very fluffy, and the shape of the sheep, it looks so cute. I love this. I love this one. And I was knitting on, I think, 4.5mm needle. This hat came out quite bigger. I used an elastic thread just along the edge, just so that it can still fit my hat, my head nicely. I think it's the perfect hat. It's I think my favorite hat of this year. And just since I'm talking about my wall garden sweater, I recently did a little modification on it, so I'll talk about it. I finished this one at the beginning of this year, or no, at the end of last year, like in December, like the last day of December. I think I finished some of the like the embroidered part on January the 1st, something like that. And if you watch my previous video, you might remember that I had an issue with the sleeve, like with the connecting between the sleeve and the shoulder part. That's the issue with that. When I was knitting the front and back panel, I knitted really tightly, or at least somewhat tightly. But when I'm knitting the sleeves, my gauge was way off. Like I was so relaxed, and my gauge was really loose. So I ended up having quite a large sleeve circumference, but a relatively small hole on the main body. But I still connect them as instructed by the pattern. That resulted in like a bulge on the sleeve part. I tried to ignore this issue when I just finished the sweater because it's still a very stunning intarsia colorwork sweater. I just didn't want to take more time to make things perfect, but as the weather getting colder again, I'm trying to wear the sweater again, and the sleeve, the bulge on the sleeve really bothers me. So I figured out a way to solve the problem without reknitting the whole sleeve, and that was to so I first had to take the sleeve and the main body apart, and I just increased the opening of the main body a little bit. So previously my sleeve hole ended up here, but here I just opened and just unravel a little bit of the front and back, like just below the underarm, so that now the sleeve hole size is the same as my sleeve circumference, and then I just connect them together again, and now it is like everything is flat. There's no little bulge on the shoulder, and now it looks like a proper drop shoulder. It is a drop shoulder design, so like before it feels like I have a huge bicep or a deltoid. It feels like I have a huge deltoid muscle on my arm when wearing the sweater, and now it just fits nicely, like a very relaxed drop shoulder look with the sweater. Okay, and the next finished object is a little scarf, and it's not the Sophie scarf. It's actually something of my own pattern or my own recipe, but not entirely. So I saw a photo from the Knitting for Anna Instagram, and she designed something called the Alex scarf, which looks very similar to the shape of the Sophie scarf, just like a long thin triangle, but instead of garter stitch she used double rib. And at that point she hasn't published the pattern yet, and I just look at the photo and try to figure out the construction and just knit something by myself. So I really prefer this one to the Sophie scarf because I don't like the look of purl bumps, and if doing the garter stitch you always have the purl bumps, but if I do the double rib, the purl side is squeezed in and I can only see the knit stitches, and that's what I really like about this project. And I'll just quickly read my recipe. You can also find it on my Instagram. You start by casting on 6 stitches, and there will be 3 edge stitches on each side when you're just start working in the stockinette, and you will increase 1 stitch along the right hand side edge every 4 rows, and you will establish the knit to purl to the purl to knit to double rib patterns inside as you increase more stitches. Personally, I use the M1L, so the knit left leaning make stitch, and the make 1L purlwise, just accordingly, just depending on whether I'm at the purl side or the knit side of the stitches that I need to add. And when you use about half of the ball of yarn you have, then you will start the decrease in the same rate, and stop increasing when the edge stitches are surrounded by P2. So yeah, just stop decreasing when you have 6 stitches, I think. I don't know what I said. So it's if you have some basic knitting experience of increase and decrease and knitting double ribs, I think you could figure this out. Unlike the Sophie scarf, this one doesn't use I-cord edge. I tried I-cord edging and it doesn't look great with the double rib, so just do, I think what I did was just to slip on 1 row and knit or purl knit on the other row to have this nice edge, just because the double rib, it will like shrink on itself on this side, so it doesn't work very well with I-cord edging. Yeah, and it looks very great. The yarn I used is a Chinese yarn I got. It was a chainette alpaca yarn, so it is very soft, not itchy at all, and the color is great. The color matches well with everything, since I have mostly green things. And it's a very nice autumn winter color, so yeah, I quite like it. And actually, after I just finished the pattern, I still have a little bit of yarn left, and what I did was to pick up and knit some I-cord just at the root of this little scarf. So you can see there is a little bit of the I-cord, and then I just finished up using all the yarn, so I'm really happy with finishing the yarn I had. The brand is 时刻 and the yarn is called 青云. You will not be able to get it unless you are in China, so yeah, you probably don't need that piece of information. I have one more finished object. I have actually a lot more finished objects. Oh my god, I have so many things. I finished a little pumpkin. Oh wait, it doesn't do the automatic focus thing. The pattern is a free pattern on Ravelry by Claire Garland. It's called Everlasting Pumpkin. It's just a little small item that I can knit for this season. And I really love this pumpkin design because it is not symmetrical. It has 7 different pieces or furrows, as you call it, and each like the size of each furrow are different. There are like 4 bigger furrows and 3 smaller furrows, so it makes the pumpkin has a really like organic, natural feel instead of like a human-made plushy toy, like everything is symmetrical, that sort of feeling. So it looks really, really organic. The yarn I used is another just random acrylic yarn from my grandma. The color is really great. The color is a true pumpkin color. And the little tip, what do you call it? The stem? And the little stem is just the yarn from my wall garden sweater. Is this color from my wall garden sweater. I think I finished knitting the whole thing just in 2 hours, like including the sewing. Oh, this is knitted in piece, and then you sew it, and then you do some other thing to make the furrow deeper, or to cinch the furrow, like just to make it deeper. And yeah, that's a perfect pumpkin. I really love like how squishy it is, and also the size is just of the size of my hand. It has a very good massage feeling. Like when I'm feeling stressed, I just do this. It can release my stress. And the little stem, it really, like, it massaged my palm really well. So it's a good pumpkin. Next projects, I have a lot of socks. So these are just 2 pairs of socks, but I've actually made 4 pair of socks. So as I said, I went back to China 2 months ago, and the only yarn I brought back home was some socks yarn just to knit on the airplane. During my time at home, I finished 1, 2, 3. I finished 3 pair of socks. 1 pair I gave it to my father-in-law, another pair I gave it to my mother-in-law, so it's not here with me anymore. But I can put some pictures here. The yarn I used, they are all Van Gogh Opal. So it's socks yarn from Opal, and the series is their Van Gogh socks. I got this. I knitted this one first. Actually, this is the Night Cafe Terrace. I think this is one of the best. And another is the Sunflower, and this one was Bridge in Arles or something. I don't quite remember. It's a bridge, and it's blue-green, so it's my color, so that's why I got it. So I got these 3 yarns, and then I got some like solid color. I just had some leftover solid color socks yarn that I can just pair them with the Van Gogh socks yarn together. And this pair I knitted, for me, just 1 ball of these Van Gogh socks yarn, I can make 2 pairs of socks. So this is 1 of the Van Gogh socks yarn for me, another pair for my parents-in-laws, and then I finish another one. So that's the white color against the sunflower socks, and I finished another pair, but the finished one is not with me anymore. I just put the picture here, and I pair this one with like a green blue socks yarn just for the toe and the heel. The pattern I used is always my own sock pattern. It's called No Frills Toe Up Socks. I can memorize this pattern by heart now. And toe up socks is my favorite sock construction. Basically, this pattern consists of all my favorite sock knitting techniques. So yeah, these sock knitting projects are just like what I do on the airplane, or when I get bored, like just when I don't want to pay attention to my knitting and still do something. So yeah, I think that finally concludes my finished objects. That's a lot. And now we go to my work in progress. First work in progress, the one that I've done the most is this is what I have finished. This is the Camisole No.5 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This pattern has been out there for a while now, and the more interesting thing is the yarn. I've showed the yarn from a few episodes before. It is a gifted yarn from a viewer, and it's from New Zealand. It is a Possum Merino blend yarn, so it is very soft. The yarn name is Happy Go Knitting, the Ahulu. And I have 400 meters, so 100 gram. And so I have to play yarn chicken a little bit. But the good thing about this pattern is that it's knitting top down. So I can always just knit top down. I have already joined in the round, and then I think I'll just stop at here and finish knitting like the double knit armhole and the double knit collar. I'll finish that, and then I'll just use all the rest yarn to finish the bottom. I've seen some like projects on Ravelry that says 400 meters is not enough, and if that's the case, I still have some leftover Sunday from my previous projects, the Sunday Scar Sunday, which is another merino fingering weight yarn, so I can just like do another block or just like do a hem in a different color. I think these two colors will go great, or it will be okay. So that's an option if I don't have enough yarn. So yeah, I really like the fabric. It's kind of dense. This is like more like a sports weight rather than fingering weight. I still use the 3mm needle as instructed by the pattern to knit it. So this will just be like those undergarment that keeps me warm. And also another reason I want to knit this is that it will show my shoulder. And I've been trying to build some arm shoulder muscles because I think I'm like, I don't have much muscle on my arm and shoulder, and I want to work on that, and I want to show off when I'm like have more muscles on my shoulder, and this is the perfect garment to show that. And I also have some cardigan to wear with it. Oh, actually, just an honorable mention. I also brought back a beautiful sweater from China. My grandma gave me this. It's a gray cardigan featuring a crocheted edge, like the button band, and a crocheted sleeve. I think it's made with wool. It's very warm. It's beautiful. And my grandma didn't knit this. I think she bought this, but it's definitely handmade. I can like see the yarn, like the yarn tails. Like I had to hide these tails. The person who made this did not hide the tails. Like in China, in my hometown, like especially from before, you can just buy yarn and hire some crafter to make sweater according to your instructions, or there are pre-handmade sweaters for sale, so you can just like go to those vendors or like crafters markets, some places like that, and then you can just buy beautiful handmade sweaters, and they are not expensive. They are sometimes even cheaper than the machine-made sweater that you can get from stores. So that's the old time. I also put a photo that my grandma wears this same cardigan. So yeah, I'm really happy to get this cardigan from my grandma. Another whip is, well, I haven't finished much. There's not much to say. So that's it. Guess what this is? It's a balaclava. The design is from a Japanese I think yarn brand or yarn shop, so they have their own yarn and they sell designs in kits and sometimes like little booklets, and this is one of their design. I don't think they like gave their design special names sometimes, and this one I think it's just like a generic name called cabled balaclava or something. I'll just put some photos from their Instagram here. Yeah, I just find I'm in need of a balaclava. I've never knitted a I've never knitted a balaclava before, and it's something that can warm my head and my neck together, and so I did it. The yarn I use is from my mom. So actually from my grandma. So this is my maternal grandma. My maternal grandma gave my mom a lot of this red yarn when she got married, in the hope that she's gonna knit something for herself and for me, but she didn't. So now I got the yarn, and I'm gonna knit this yarn into something for myself and probably for my mom. Like I have 2 kilograms of this red yarn. And yeah, so I'll just start by doing this balaclava, and then I'll like do some sweater in the future. I'll show you the bag. Here is the bag, and I actually have more than this bag. So that's just partially of this red yarn I have from my mom. This is just the beginning, and this is a fisherman's rib. First time I'm doing fisherman's rib. I think I like the rhythm. It's like half of the brioche stitch, so you only slip half of the time. It's not that difficult if you've already done brioche. And then after that, it will come the interesting part where I'm doing the cables, and I'm looking forward to more cabling. So that's that. And another cable project, and it's only this much, not much. So this is another design from the Daluma store, and this is from one of their kits called the Dufy sweater, and it is just a beautiful cable sweater design, and it's asymmetrical, and it also features some embroidery that you can do to decorate your cables. And my plan is that to knit the sweater in this like light gray white color, and then sew the decorations with red and green yarn, just so that it's gonna be like a Christmas festive sweater. The yarn I use are some Chinese yarn that I bought from a while ago. Is the 回归线悸动, so it's a light fingering woolen yarn. I hold 2 strands of that, and it's in a slightly darker gray, and then a lighter gray or white-ish mohair from 编织人生, and the yarn name is called 云马. And it's a nylon mohair yarn, so it's not the best quality of mohair yarn, but I bought them a while ago before I started the podcast. No, I've already started my podcast that time, but yeah, it's been a while, and I've wanted to knit a cable, just like a basic cable Aran sweater, and I haven't found the perfect pattern, and now I saw the Dufy sweater, and this is what I had to make with this yarn. My favorite part about the pattern is that it has a cable at the back, and like a horizontal cable at the back, and that part of the construction is just perfection. I finished talking about all my whips. Whew. And I have another frogged project or abandoned project. I'll just quickly talk about it. I said I'll knit the slipover from a Kato Dama spring issue, but the yarn I chose was kind of wrong. So it's a superwash merino and variegated yarn, but in the original pattern it's more like a linen or cotton, that kind of drapey summer yarn. So the drape is just not the same, and the original design is a solid color, like a yellow color yarn, but I just think the variegation of the yarn I chose it just makes the design look so busy, and I don't like it. And also grow a hate towards towards superwash yarn. I just hate the feeling of the superwash. It just feels like fake yarn. It's really just personal opinion, so you don't have to agree at all. I just like the fuzziness from the actual wool or actual merino, but with the superwash treatment, it removed that little like scale from the fiber, like the little fuzziness from the fiber. It just makes everything, it makes merino looks like acrylic, so it just makes a very cheap look, so in my opinion. So I just don't like superwash, and I don't really enjoy like hand dye yarn or variegated yarn too much unless it's like in socks. So in a garment, I don't think I like it. I think it just makes things too busy, and I prefer to see textures, to see cables, lace, and color work that you actually knit into them instead of like in the yarn. So it's just personal preference, really. So I ended up putting the project on my social media and just say if anybody want to pick it up for free, contact me. And there is one of my followers in my Chinese social media that lives in Vancouver, and she just came the next day and picked up the pattern. So she's just starting out crocheting, and I'm happy that I don't have to unravel the whole thing by myself and suffer from using a yarn that I don't like. So yeah, good for her and good for me. And then I'll talk about my acquisitions. I have a huge amount of acquisitions from China. I think I'll just quickly flash you. So first I got some Chinese knitting supplies. I got these many needles. So I think there are probably like 20 pairs of circular needles. It's from this brand called San Yan, also 3 swallows, literally translation. And it is quite a good quality, and together these cost me, let's say, less than 20 Canadian dollars. Yeah, so it's a very cheap needle, but it's really good quality. So in my past, I've never had any interchangeable needle sets. I've only like acquired over time some 40-inch or 100 centimeter circular needles of different sizes, and I've just been using magic loop method when I have to. But now, since Chinese needles are so good quality and so cheap, I just bought their 40 centimeter ones, and their 60 centimeter, and then their 80 centimeters ones. So I now have a full set of knitting needles. So I'm all set. And that's with the cost of like much lower than buying a whole interchangeable needle set from Gogh or from like all those other brands. So I'm really happy. Like you can already see some of those needles on my whips. I'd say the needle tips, they feel quite similar to the Gogh tips. It's just the cord doesn't feel as good. The cord is more like a metal one. It's not very flexible, but since I'm not doing magic loop, so it really doesn't matter if it's not a flexible needle, a flexible cord. So that's the needles. I got some books. I got a newer Kato Dama issue, the Japanese magazine translated to Chinese. This is the summer issue from this year, and featuring some patterns. I find these patterns kind of underwhelming. It's like crocheted and knitted lace, and some bags, and some hats. So I just find them a little bit underwhelming, this issue. So yeah, and I got another book of Tunisian crochet. And interestingly, in Chinese and in Japanese, we call Tunisian crochet Afghan crochet. So yeah, just different technical terms. So this is like a technique where you use these very long crochet hooks, and you do something like in between knitting and crochet, and it's supposed to be really good for like doing bags. And I'm just hoping that when I have time, I want to learn some new technique. And now let's look at Chinese yarns. Oh, actually I have a Chinese notion I want to talk about. I found this. So this, if you know the knitting barber cord, or like in Petite Knit, she also has these like where you can hold some stitches, like it works as stitch holder. It's just a little flexible tube that you can pop onto your needles and slide your stitches onto it. And I found these things, they are sold very, very cheaply in China, like $50 for 3 meters of those, where you have to spend something like $20 to buy something from like knitting barber cord. I just like feel cheated. And this is the exact same thing. The exact, like, to the smell, to the colors, to the feeling of it, because I had the knitting barber cord, so I know. Yeah, so that's crazy. So this thing in China is it's sold for like making little bracelets for children, but yeah, knitters, you use this as stitch holder and it became much more expensive. And then I also have some Chinese yarn to show you. Actually, I have this collaboration with a Chinese brand that they just send me some yarn for free in the hope that I can promote their yarn, but actually they don't sell in the English knitting world. But these yarn are very interesting, so I'll just quickly show you. I chose quite a lot of yarn from them. This is called jian, so this is silk yarn. So I got mostly summer yarn from them because their winter yarn is more superwash-y, and as I've said, I hate superwash. So it's mostly summer yarn. So that's their silk yarn in this purple color. So I'm very proud that I'm trying some different colors than green this time. Oh, sorry. Speaking of which, I got a green yarn. This one is called Yunma. It is linen yarn, but with like little, let's say, like little sparkles. So yeah, I cannot do this. It doesn't autofocus, but that's the color. And next I got is their silk mohair. Their silk mohair are quite expensive. It's like similar to other silk mohairs you can get here in North America. Yeah, I'd say, but since they sent me for free, I'll just ask for it. I got a sweater quantity of it. I'm thinking of, so that's the purple shade I got. I'm thinking of knitting like a fortune sweater. This is my fortune sweater in Midnight Soul, the brushed alpaca yarn. I'm thinking of making that one with like double strand of this silk mohair, but I don't know, I just hate make the same pattern twice. I've never made the same pattern twice unless, yeah, I've never made the same sweater pattern twice. I just got really bored. So maybe I'll just choose some new pattern. I'm thinking of the Kuta sweater by Sari Nordland. I've done the Kuta top, like the camisole one, but I like the stitch pattern, but I never did the sweater. I think the sweater would look great, and I think with 2 strands of this I can get like a fluffy texture. That's another potential choice. And if you have any suggestions of using this beautiful purple yarn, please let me know. So this one, it is like a ribbon yarn. So it's like a flat ribbon kind of, oh, you cannot see it there. There's a flat ribbon cotton yarn. I've never knitted with ribbon yarn. I'm just curious to try it just to see what the knitted fabric would look like. I got 4 rolls of this, so maybe I could do a ranunculus. I've never done the famous ranunculus, the popular ranunculus. Maybe I could do it, or I could do something else. It's like a yellow-green shade, and I do like it. And another one is this. It's linen and tencel blend yarn in this like turquoise bluish color. It is a fingering weight yarn. I only got 3 skeins, so I might do like a camisole or something. So I'm all set up for next summer. I don't need to buy any more yarn for summer, but who knows? Yeah, and that's all my knitting related acquisitions and chats. I also have some sewing advancements, but I don't know if I'll have time to chat about it. So I'll just quickly tell you what I did. So I started sewing earlier this year, and I finished this skirt with a pocket. So it's just a pleated skirt with this blue and green fabric. It's a nice color. It fits all the clothes I own. And with the same fabric, like I had some leftover fabric, I also made a pair of shorts. I've made this pattern before with another fabric, so I just made it again. It's a nice shorts, but the weather is not quite right at the moment. And I got a lot of fabric from China. Here, that's my pile of fabric I carried back from China. I have a green one. I have a blue one. This one I got from my mom. This one I got from my grandma. This one I got from my grandma. These are not long, like only 1 meter to 1.5 meter-ish, like only probably enough to make a little t-shirt. So I don't know what to make with them yet. These ones I bought from a fabric, online fabric store. Fabric number 1 for a skirt. Number 2 for a skirt or a dress. Number 3 for a skirt or a dress. Beautiful, like blue-green, green fabrics. And from the Chinese in-person fabric shop. This is a thicker fabric, probably for a dress. And then this is just a lining fabric. I'll probably, I want to line my crocheted dress, my wedding dress, if you watch my last episode. So I will probably line my crocheted skirt. So that's all my fabric. And now just the last few minutes, if you're still sticking with me, I'll chat a little bit about my personal life. So I've made a decision that I'm going to pause my knitting design. I've designed and published a few patterns on Ravelry and everywhere, and I've been trying to, and I was trying to make a career out of knitting, but that seems not quite possible or not quite practical, because it's the money making part is very slow, and I'm only interested in the designing part, but not like supporting this career with other things like selling yarn, selling notions and needles. So I feel a lot of like knitwear designers had to combine their design with other random things to make this work, but I don't like those. And even for the designing part, I felt like I've lost some designing mojo, because when my only source of income depends on how many patterns I sell, I started to think about like how I can make my pattern more popular, more accessible, but that will constrain my designing to some extent. Like instead of just thinking about how to make a sweater that I want to make, I will think about if I add this element, would the other knitters like it? And then it's just decreased my passion for designing. And then when I think about like all the grading work, if my stitch pattern is too difficult, the grading will be very difficult, and then the pattern writing part, the testing part, it just became too kind of stressful, became kind of overwhelming. And I just think that it's probably better if I pause my designing and just start with basic knitting, like knit some patterns that I wanted to knit like from other designers and to learn from them. I mean, I've only started knitting for 2 years. I'm still like sort of a beginner knitter or a beginner designer at least. I wouldn't expect I to be hugely famous at a very short amount of time. So So I just think maybe it's time for me to just treat knitting as a hobby and knit whatever I want and pick up my passion for knitting and just do the designing as a side hustle. Like whenever I feel like it, I'll still design something, and whenever I feel like I have the extra energy, I would write the pattern, grade it, and all those. But if I don't, I'll just keep knitting as some happy thing that I do instead of like a stressful thing I do. And I had to find some another stable source of income. I mean, I have a PhD in engineering, and I'm supposed to be doing some engineering thingy, so I guess it's time for me to do some engineering thingy and find a stable paid job. I mean, I don't hate engineering. I do enjoy like working with numbers, quantities, doing like data analysis and things. So I'm looking for jobs. That's all I'm saying. And I'll still be making these videos just when I have the extra energy, just depending on how busy I get. And also, I have to admit that I haven't been watching a lot of knitting podcasts lately. Although I make knitting podcasts, I don't actually watch a lot of knitting podcasts. That's because I feel like I've already spent a lot of time in knitting, and I work at a yarn store. And working at the yarn store, did I say that in my introduction? I work here on weekends at West Coast Wools, here a yarn store, the best yarn store in Vancouver. So if you are here in Vancouver, definitely check us out. We have a beautiful yarn store. Yeah, and working at the yarn store is like watching knitting podcasts for 2 days straight, because you learn about how these actual knitters approach their projects and how they think about yarns. So that's like in-person knitting podcast. So I just don't feel like I need to spend even more time on more contents on knitting. I mean, what I hate, it would be just to confine myself, like to reduce myself only to this corner where everything is about knitting, and that's not right. I think knitting is an inspiring, like, creative activity, and if it's making my life smaller and smaller, and that's not good. So when I'm knitting, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I watch videos about other things. So that's what I do generally. I still watch some knitting podcasts, but I watch Chinese knitting podcasts. I also make these knitting podcasts in Chinese, and I'm like the first few person who did that, and now there are more and more Chinese knitters who are sharing their passion about knitting in the formats of podcasts, and I just feel like I'm culturally more connected to them. I mean, podcast is not all about like what they knit. I also like to learn about their life and how they think about things like knitting or life and just things in general. And I just feel I have a better connection with my people. So yeah, and also even when I'm watching English podcasters, I tend to like watch podcasters who have Asian or Chinese background. Recently, one of my Chinese podcast friends, Jenny, she's also starting an English language podcast, so you can check her out. And I've also found another podcaster, her name is Jingyi, and she started an English knitting channel as well. So they're all Chinese knitters living in North America, so sort of a similar life situation as me. So if you're interested in this kind of style, check them out. So I guess that's all my little chat from today. Thank you for watching. I know it can be quite a long episode. Oh, and happy Halloween. It's just a pumpkin. It's not scary at all. I hope this was a relaxing or interesting episode for you. Please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for your support as always. And if you would like to support me financially, you could consider donate to me on my Ko-fi, or you can buy my patterns. If any of my designs interest you, that's also a great way to support my passion for designing and my passion for knitting. And yeah, my birthday is next month. It's November 16th. I think I'll do a little bit of my birthday sale. So be looking out for the birthday sale information. And at the end of my episode, I usually play a bit of piano. I'm playing somewhat a little bit scary song today. And thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Enjoy, bye!